maple. Orange, maple. What I have is a maple dowel. This is 1 3/4 in diameter, and the biggest diameter I have to deal with on the chair itself is a little over 1 5/8. So plenty of wood here to do what I need to do. Like I said in the previous video, I'm going to just turn from here down. And there's a slight taper here, not a big deal. And then I'm going to mount them up dry, put the new rockers in place with the slots, and then glue everything up. Make sure it all fits and glue everything up. So I got the other rocker off, by the way, and it's badly worn. So yeah, the idea of putting on 2 new rockers turns out to be a good one. So the first thing I need to do is to cut this down to a manageable shape to turn it. Now, I like to have about 1 inch on either end of a turning that I do, so that I have room to work in with my tools, but it's nice and sturdy at either end, holding it on the drive and the live center. The hardest part about this is going to be getting the camera over to the lathe to get it to a position where you can see what the hell I'm doing. Turning. So I've turned spindles a lot in the past, and 1 or 2 people have asked me, how do you get them to be exactly the same if you're doing it by hand? Take them in your hand, hold them out like that, and then ask them to point out the difference. They can't. You can get really close, but and make it almost perfect. But if it's a little off, no one's going to notice. Little tip. So now I want to cut these down to a length that is manageable. The turned length is going to be 3.5 inches. It's got a flat bottom, and of course we know the diameter is going to be 1 5/8. 1 5/8, 2 5/8. 1 5/8. Yeah, this is 1 3/4, 1 5/8. So 3.5 inches. So I want to cut these off at about 6 inches to give me enough room on either side for chucking up in the lathe safely. Cut them in half. Cut them down now. Little tool I like to use for measuring stuff when I'm cutting long linear things is I'm right-handed, so this measure reads from right to left. And usually, you know, my right hand is pulling the saw down, and my waist is on this side. So right to left. So first I want to trim the end, and then I'm going to cut both pieces out. There's only going to be 2. So there you go. You notice I addressed the end first, so I have a nice square fit on the end. I know I have the labels here. They're going to be turned off, or I'm going to scrape those off or get them off with Goo Gone. The reason I picked the label end is because the other end had some sapwood on it, and that would look like it would have chipped out when I was turning. So there's my 2 pieces to make my new bottom half of the legs for the chair. Now I got to clean up over by the lathe and get the camera over there so you can actually see what the hell I'm doing. But before we do any of that, I have to get a pattern, or get a good pattern of this leg piece right here, so I have something to go by while I'm turning it on the lathe. See this picture? I drew a box on this piece of graph paper that is 3.5 inches by 1 5/8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this distance from here to here, and then from here to here, and here to here, and then the depth from here and here, here, and here, and that way I can draw up a pattern that I can use visually to turn the piece on the lathe. So let's get busy with it. I'll do a time lapse on that, and then I'll show you the finished product. looks a little messy. So what I have here are the measurements, diameters at these points, here, here, and here. And this is the distance from the first cut to the last cut. And this is just kind of is a rough representation of what those cuts have to look like. So I'll have the leg right there to look at when I need to, but this is essentially a quick and dirty drawing of what I need to cut out on the lathe, and hopefully it'll become apparent when I start turning. All right, so let's chuck one up on the lathe and get started. Well, I was able to scooch the camera in a little closer. Most of this is going to be down here, so you don't need to see a lot of it. So I got my drawing here. The first thing I gotta do is index the workpiece in the lathe, and that means putting the cross marks here, putting a dimple in, and then chucking it up in the lathe. And anybody who's done any wood turning has done this before many, many times. I have a center finder, a little brass center finder, banged against the microphone. Go this way, go this way, and just make sure that it's the same. Yep, the same on the other end. Cross. That gives me real close to center. Back up. And I have an awl and my little brass mallet. And I'm going to tap a little dimple right where those pieces of, where those pencil marks cross. One there, one there. And this is by no means absolutely perfect because, you know, you hit wood, the grain will cause the awl to drift. I hope you see this in camera, but that's what I'm talking about. So now I'm going to chuck it up. Now the first thing we got to do here is we have to make this the diameter that we want. This is 1 3/4, and we want to go down to 1 5/8, which is not removing a lot of stock. I'll probably use my Gilbert caliper, which I have another video on, to do that. But first and foremost, I'll take my little cheat sheet drawing and put it up here on the magnetic sheet, a magnetic rest. And what I want to do now, actually it's not what I want to do. What I want to do is I'll fold it like so, so I can get right up against the workpiece and then do my marks on the workpiece while it's turning. I don't know what RPM this is on. That's a little high. I did that the wrong way. I got to get this down to the right diameter first. So, is that so that's all set. Now, what I want to do is take my parting tool, and I'm going to put some marks on here at the depth that I want to reach when I take the wood off of this for the actual part, from here to here, and then measure it as I cut it. So let's bring the camera around so you can kind of see what's going on. Got the parting tool and the caliper, and it shows 1 3/4. I want to go down 1/8 of an inch. You notice when I introduced the parting tool to the workpiece, it started to chatter and bounce. Turns out that sapwood that I spoke of earlier in the video runs the entire length. I just didn't see it like I should have. You can see here, it doesn't show up very well, but look at that. You can see it there, more pronounced. So it was very pronounced at one end of the dowel, so that's why I went with the other end to cut my workpieces off of. That didn't work. I even tried to continue on cutting it, and I just can't get clean cuts with that sapwood in there. So I have to get a new 1 3/4 inch dowel. So I'm going to end the video here, and we'll pick it up at the lathe when I get a new dowel. And so until then, make great things out of wood and inspect your wood better than I did when you're going to turn it. Later.